What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It is the Tuesday after Week 5 Monday Night Football loss, Green Bay Packers versus Las Vegas Raiders, where they lost 17-13 in an abysmal performance by that offense and just overall as a football team. The Packers are now 2-3 heading into their Week 6 bye week. After the bye week, they head to Denver to play the Denver Broncos, and at this point, we're kind of wondering, is the Denver Broncos even a guaranteed win for this Packers football team? But since it's the day after the game, regardless, win or loss, it's time to dive into the PFF grades from last night's game. I do this after every game, win or loss, and we dive down into the grades. So if this does interest you and you happen to be a new viewer to the channel, go down and click subscribe so you don't miss any of these videos. I post everything Green Bay Packers, news analysis, and updates, such as injury reports, analysis, and live streams during the game. So go down and click subscribe if that does interest you. Before we dive into the PFF grades, I want to take a second to give a big shout out to today's video sponsor and my channel sponsor for the rest of the NFL season, BetUS, the leading online betting platform. BetUS is offering an awesome promotion through my channel, offering a 125% deposit match simply by clicking the link down in the description below and signing up on BetUS. So if you deposit $100, you'll get an additional $125 to bet with. So even when the Green Bay Packers are playing terrible and losing games, maybe you can at least make some money by doing some prop bets or money lines. BetUS always has a ton of odds boost offers on their website to check out week in and week out. They have plenty of different bets to choose from, such as point spreads, money lines, prop bets, and even future bets such as Rookie of the Year, NFL MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and all of that. So if you want to get in on the action and claim your 125% deposit match, simply go down in the description and click the link and sign up for BetUS today. All right, so now let's dive into these PFF grades from this Week 5 game, Packers versus Las Vegas Raiders Monday Night Football. We're going to start on the defensive side of the ball. I thought the defense wasn't that bad. There's some issues here and there, such as Preston Smith lining up over Devontae Adams and back off coverage on 3rd and 3. You know, the usual issues we have been seeing from this Joe Barry defense. But overall, in my opinion, this defense didn't lose this football game. So bringing up the PFF screen here, we see at the top is Rasul Douglas with an amazing game. A 90.9 defensive grade, allowed 2 receptions on 4 targets. Rasul Douglas had an awesome game, and watching last night, it really did look like that. Like, I thought Rasul probably would be the highest graded defender, him or Rudy Ford, and we see Rudy Ford at number 2. So awesome game by Rasul Douglas. He's been cornerback 1 this year. It's kind of been a upsetting year for Jair Alexander through injury and just underperforming. Rasul has really stepped up to the plate. He's looked great this year, and that's showcased here in this game against the Raiders. Rudy Ford has had an awesome previous 3 games. Here he is the second highest graded defender with a 75.0. Going into his profile here, we see the last 3 games, 75, 73.4, 88.2. First 2 games were definitely a struggle for Rudy Ford, but then he started to put it together and has had an excellent last 3 games for this defense and has been a bright spot on this defense. Going into the season, we thought safety would be a much bigger concern, and Darnell Savage did go down with an injury, so that's something to monitor. It could get pretty rough back there, but Rudy Ford has been stepping up and playing well so far this season. Rashawn Gary is the 3rd highest graded player at a 71.4. He had 3 total pressures and 1 sack, seeing the most snaps he's seen all season with 30 total snaps here, 19 pass rush snaps, and still getting 3 pressures and 1 sack. So still, wreaking havoc down there in the pass rushing game, creating pressure on the opposing quarterback. JJ Enagbare with a nice game. He's kind of had some down games this year. We saw the Packers cut Justin Hollins, so players like Enagbare and LVN are going to get more snaps. He had a 70.1 grade here, 72.4 tackle grade. He had 1 total pressure and 1 sack. Lucas Van Ness, also a decent grade here, a pretty good grade here, a 68.5. He had 0 pressure, 0 sacks, but he also did have 2 tackles and 1 stop. So overall, a nice grade by Lucas Van Ness. Again, seeing 26 snaps. JJ Enagbare saw 29 snaps. Then we see Devontae Wyatt with a 68.0 grade. He had 3 total pressures. He was the player that got the instant pressure that ended up in a Preston Smith sack, so I thought it was a good night from Devonte Wyatt. Eric Wilson had 44 total snaps. He had to step in after Quay Walker went down with injury, and I thought he filled in very, very nicely. For being a fourth-string linebacker, coming in and having to start at inside linebacker when you're primarily a special teams player, I thought he really stepped up to the plate. He had a 67.0, a 73.6 run defense. He even had a pressure and a quarterback hit and 5 total tackles and only 1 missed tackle. John Owen stepped in once Darnell Savage went down and had a 65.1, so he wasn't a liability back there by any means, and had a decent grade and was one of the top 10 graded defenders on the defense. TJ Slayton, a 63.9. And then we see Jaire Alexander, another pretty poor game, middle-to-pack game by Jaire Alexander, a 63.5, a 77.6 tackle grade, not a good run defense grade, an okay coverage grade. He only allowed 1 reception on 1 target, so, he didn't do horrible by any means. Like we see week 2 where he allowed 5 receptions. He allowed 1 reception on 16 yards. We'll go into the coverage matchups right after this and see who that reception was on and how many times he was lined up across from Davante Adams. But it seemed like they were kind of lining up Rasul over him a lot, or they were just keeping their sides, and Adams was going over to Rasul's sides more, and Rasul had an excellent game. I want to see Jaire step up. It's been a down year for him so far, and I just want to see him step up and maybe create a turnover or something of that sort. Donald Levitt only had 2 snaps. Colby Wooden, a 60.8. Isaiah McDuffie, also a 60.8. Nice tackle grade there, 6 tackles and 0 missed. Darnell Savage, 60.8, only had 36 total snaps. He's kind of had a low grade the past 4 weeks after a nice grade in week 1. He's had a pretty low grade below a 63.2 all the last 4 weeks. So although he's looked better this year, he hasn't graded better this year. And he's injured now. We'll see how that goes going into the future. Carl Brooks, a 60.5. Keyshawn Nixon, a 56.4. Kenny Clark, a 52.6. Kenny Clark has had some really rough graded games this season so far. He had 2 total pressures and a sack. Preston Smith, this surprises me to see him this low graded. I thought he played very, very well. It's not his fault to be lined up over Davante Adams. He had 4 total pressures and a sack, and he made a lot of stops in the backfield as well. He had 3 stops here. I feel like Preston Smith was good against the run. He was good in the tackling game. He even pressured the quarterback. It surprises me to see Preston Smith this low. A 25.5 coverage grade. Like, how are you going to put that on Preston Smith? Like, putting him over Davante Adams, like, what do you expect, right? And then Quay Walker, I thought he was playing excellent up until getting hurt. So, again, kind of surprising here to see a 35.6. So looking into the coverage matchups and Davante Adams going into this game, we thought, we'd see Jaire shadow Davante Adams. It didn't happen too much, and Davante Adams wasn't even targeted when Jaire was covering him. Davante Adams was targeted once against Rasul. He got a catch for 5 yards. He was targeted once against Nixon, catch for 7 yards, once against Quay for 12, and of course the once against Preston Smith for 21 yards. So 4 catches, 45 yards. That's holding Davante Adams in check. He was injured, I think, with a shoulder injury, so that probably affected him a decent bit in this game. But overall, it definitely held him in check. Now, Jacoby Myers was another story. He was their leading receiver, 7 receptions for 75 yards. He was targeted 3 times against Rasul and only had 1 catch for 6 yards, so Rasul did a great job covering Myers. He was targeted twice against Rudy Ford, had 1 catch. He was targeted once against Jaire to catch for 16, once against McDuffie for 18, once against Wilson for 8, once against Nixon for 10, and once against Preston. So again, Preston in the slot covering a wide receiver, allowed 2 receptions, which again, it's not on him. Preston Smith should not be out there. I know it's a defensive scheme and the Raiders are, using a mismatch and doing a good job at it, but any moment you have Preston Smith in the slot covering a wide receiver, you should just, at that point, just rush against the quarterback and leave the receiver wide open anyways. All right, so now let's flip over to the offensive side of the ball for the Green Bay Packers, going over their grades on offense. This offense was abysmal last night, really got nothing going. We see Ben Sims here at the top, only 9 total snaps, but was the highest graded player with an 82.3. Definitely had his best game of his season so far. He had a nice catch on the sideline where he stiff-armed, I think it was Marcus Peters. We see in the pass blocking game, not good at all, 26.6, but decent in the run blocking game, 70.5. Josiah DeGuara was the second highest graded player. I think he also had a decent game. He had a good couple blocks. He had a nice catch. I think it went for like 20 yards or something of that sort. A 78.0 grade here. Good in the run blocking game, 69.6. Decent in the pass blocking game, 66.9. A.J. Dillon was the third highest graded player. That checks out. He was kind of the lone bright spot on this offense. And when A.J. Dillon's rushing for 3.8 yards per carry and he's the bright spot, that shows you how bad that offense was last night. a 72.8 grade here. Tay Wicks had 1 catch for 10 yards. The Packers need to use him more, in my opinion. He had a 71.3. Zach Tom was the highest graded lineman on the Packers, a 65.6. He's been the highest graded lineman on the Packers all year and really has been a consistent lineman. Josh Myers was the second highest graded lineman here, a 65.0, with a nice 77.4 pass block, but pretty, bad run blocking grade, 60.7. Hasn't really been great in the run blocking game. Anyone in that interior really hasn't. Christian Watson had a 62.3. Pat Taylor, a 60.3. Good in pass blocking game, and that's why Pat Taylor saw so many snaps. A 76.4 pass blocking grade. He's been good pass blocking, and again, that's why they had him out there over someone like Emmanuel Wilson, who, as we see next here, only had 1 snap, which is a little insane to me. I kind of thought they'd give Emmanuel Wilson more reps in the running game. Simply didn't happen. Elton Jenkins, not a great game after returning from his MCL injury, a 59.1. John Runyon continues to struggle pretty horribly in the running game at 57.9, and he was great in the pass game, right? An 87.4. But he's been so bad. He's been so bad in the run blocking game. That entire interior, the offensive line, like I said, has been bad. A 47.0 there. Samori Torrey saw 3 snaps. Luke Musgrave, a 55.0, not a good grade from him. Jordan Love, a horrible grade, 53.0. That's definitely his lowest grade on the season. As we see here, by far, 53.0. Definitely Jordan Love's, worst game of his career, in my opinion. Jaden Reed, a 51.5, really was invisible all game. Same with Romeo Dobbs, a 51.0. So seeing these lower grades is interesting because that kind of tells me maybe they weren't getting open or they weren't in the right place at the right time, and it wasn't all on Jordan Love. Rasheed Walker had another rough game, 47.6, including an abysmal run blocking grade of 34.1. And Tucker Kraft was the lowest graded Packer on offense with a 36.2. Just didn't do good in the run blocking game at all. It just seems like he's really not ready for that role right now, and the Packers might want to look to sign or trade for a veteran type of blocking type of tight end and kind of redshirt Tucker Kraft this year at this point. He hasn't had great grades all year. His highest grade was a 59.0 with 2 total snaps. So anytime he's gotten over 10 snaps, he's had in a pretty abysmal grade. Not saying Tucker Kraft is a bust. It is a Packers 3rd rounder, but not saying he's a bust, but because it's too early to tell. It's still, only week 5 of his rookie season, but, we thought this was going to happen. The transition from, Division II college football into the NFL is huge. I think they should lower his snaps on offense and maybe sign a veteran blocking type of tight end to add into this offense. And speaking of blocking, now let's go over the pressures and sacks. Zach Tom was the highest graded lineman, but also allowed the most pressures, tied with Rasheed Walker. Zach Tom allowed 4 pressures and 4 hurries. Rasheed Walker the same, 4 pressures and 4 hurries. Elton Jenkins allowed 3 pressures and 3 hurries. Josh Myers allowed 2 pressures and 2 hurries. Ben Sims allowed a pressure, which ended up in a sack on Jordan Love. So overall, the Packers, pass blocking, offensive line wasn't terrible. Only allowed 14 pressures and 1 sack. Again, it's just the run blocking has been so bad by this Packers offensive line, and you can't always blame A.J. Dillon. Like, there's times he's hit in the backfield 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, or a time he's running to the left and John Runyon's just in the way, and A.J. Dillon has to pretty much push John Runyon out of the way, who's blocking no one, and stops, an even bigger gain. I thought A.J. Dillon was impressive last night. He was driving his legs. He was running hard. A lot of his yards were after contact at the line of scrimmage and him creating an extra 3 to 4 yards. A.J. Dillon wasn't the problem last night. This passing game was the problem. This run blocking game was the problem. This offense has been a problem, especially in the first half, getting outscored 54-6 in the last 3 games. So those are all the grades from week 5, Packers versus Raiders. The Packers have a lot to fix, a lot to clean up heading into this bye week, and I hope some things change. The opening script by this offense has been abysmal. The play calling was horrible last night. And it all starts with Matt LaFleur setting the tone, setting the energy of this offense. The energy's looked down every start of the game so far this season by the offense. The defense energy has been up, right? Like, they've created stops, they've created turnovers right away in games, and yet the offense turns around and does nothing and just keeps putting the defense back out on the field, and they end up tired, and they end up giving up points, and then people are getting mad at the defense, even though the offense has been helping them 0. So again, hopefully a lot of this gets fixed heading into the bye week, and the Packers can get a little bit more healthy, and Aaron Jones can hopefully come back. Not saying he's going to fix everything, but he definitely will help this offense, obviously. But that about does it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like down below. It supports my channel a ton. But I'll catch you on the next one. And as always, go Pack Go.